Yo, what is happening, guys? Jeff back here with part number 21. Hopefully the final part of the whole thing. I guess we'll know by the end of it. But we are on the very last parts of this project, and I'm super excited. As I always say, guys, this is going to be it, man. We are so close. I'm so stoked. So in the last part, we just did a ton of refinement. Prelim refinement anyways. We just did a whole bunch of sanding, beveling, getting our lines correct and all that. And I am so happy with the result right now. It is looking great. I'm going to show you guys the first side by side of the two overfenders together so you can see the symmetry that we've managed to capture here between the two. It's looking awesome, as you guys will see in just a second. Now, as I stated at the end of the last video, we're at the point now where we're going to go ahead and drill some holes into the overfender so we can actually attach it to the car. That will help us move to the next step of refinement, which is going to be doing the final sand down, the final fill if needed, while it's on the car, so we know it's taking the exact shape. It's curving to the fender, and it's not warped out at all, as it very well could be off the car. We just want to put it on the car so we know that it's in the exact position, and then do a final sand down, and that way we can guarantee that it is the final shape that it's going to be every time it's put on the car. In order to get our proper points for the holes that we need to drill, it's going to be super simple. I'm just going to lay up the overfender right next to the other one, and I'm going to lay them side by side, and I should be able to just mark exactly where the holes are on the other one onto the new one. We'll get a super accurate match between the two, and then once I have the holes, I'll just drill them out with just a smaller hole at first, and we're just going to use temporary screws, just some regular screws for now, just to fix it on the car. We're not going to use the actual hardware yet, the M6 overfender bolts yet. We're just going to use regular screws to get it on, because we still do have to do a little bit of refinement yet. We're not at the point where we're going to put our well nuts into the fender just yet. I'm just going to drill smaller diameter holes for now, and then we'll go in with the larger stuff a little bit later. We still have to detail out the actual mounting points, and we're not going to do that yet. We'll do that in this video, but we're just going to drill out the holes to get it on the car for right now. And once we get the final sand and the final fill done, then we'll take it back off again. We'll detail out the mounting points. We'll finish up the inner wheel well parts. We'll do the detail on that. And guess what, guys? We are pretty much done. That's it. We just got to get primer on this thing, do any extra pinhole filling and stuff like that. Primer is going to take care of a lot of that, but I like to go over with the spot putty one last time on anything obvious. There's always little things that you cannot see that are going to be hidden until you actually get the primer on it, and the primer will reveal a lot. And then I usually go back in after the first coat of primer. I give it a nice sand down, go over with some more spot putty. By the end of the thing, I usually get pretty much all the pinholes taken care of. And when I go and have these things painted, which by the way is what I've decided, I'm just going to end up having the whole car painted. I'm not going to wrap these things. I'm going to just go ahead and do paint on the whole thing. I've already got a guy picked out to do my paint. That's for another video though. But when I take it to the painter, he's going to go ahead and finish it the rest of the way. He'll make sure they're primered up real nice. All the pinholes are gone, and he'll do his thing. He'll work his magic. So I'm really excited, guys. We are like on the very end. So let me show you right now what the two overfenders look like side by side. This is looking dope because you can really see the symmetry we've been able to capture here. Couldn't be happier with it myself. Check it out. Bam. So there it is. We have the two overfenders laid up back to back. You can see here's the first one, obviously, and here's the one we've been working on. So you can see the symmetry. Look at the symmetry, guys. Look at this symmetry. Come on, man, my camera's tripping. This one's kind of hard to see because it's so many different colors. It's kind of camo right now, but man, I'm telling you, man, it's super, super close. So definitely got a nice, like 90%, like I was saying, 99, 90, 95% I'm gonna say on this one. You know me with my percentages, but look at that. I even surprise myself sometimes. Anyways, I'm very happy with it. As you can probably tell by the tone of my voice, I'm very happy. It looks great. Definitely happy with the symmetry we got going on here. That's going to work for me. Absolutely. So here you can see how we're going to get our match on our mounting points. Just lay them up back to back. I'm just going to do one right here, one right there, one right there, etc. We're just going to follow them all along the top. And then I'll just take my measure tape to get this one right here. And I'll measure it from this hole, and we'll get one will be right about here. And then we'll do the same exact thing for this bottom one here. There's one right there. I got to do a little repair right there. I got in too tight with one of my screws right there, and I cracked some of the gel coat on that one, but I'll fix that up real quick. That won't take long at all. But there's one right there, and then there's one there, and we're gonna get all these ones with just measurement, all the ones that I can't lay it up directly. But yeah, that's how we're gonna do it. And then for the actual detail, for the little indentations, I'm just gonna take my marker and then just do an approximate. And then I actually have a popsicle stick. Let me show you. Let me get one of these. Like basically how I made those is I took like damn, I'm bleeding. I don't know what the hell that is, but I took a popsicle stick like this, and I just used the popsicle stick as basically a guide to make these. So I just put the popsicle stick in there. There's actually one laying around that is actually shaved down a little bit. That I'll find it. It's over here somewhere. That's the actual size. But that's all I did, man. Is you use what you got, you know, around the house or whatever, to get some of your details, and it works out really good. So I'll just put in those. I'll use my marker to just get the lines for the sides of them. Oh no, now I'm putting blood on my overfender. Hey, blood, sweat, and tears, guys. Blood, sweat, and tears, literally, on this thing. Anyways, yeah, I'll just take my marker and I'll mark out the lines on the side, so I know I get an approximate point where I'm going to be carving those in. And in order to carve those in, I use my Dremel again. I use that thing so much, it's crazy. And I use, let's see, which one is it? This right here, this bit. Get a focus on that. Yeah, it's just basically like a drum. It's not the sanding drum, but it's the one where there's actually, the top is also abrasive. I think this is just for grinding mostly, but it works well for what I'm trying to do. It's the exact diameter that I want, so I just use this to like set it in and then just carve it in real carefully. And for the tighter details, if I need to just straighten out the sidewall or whatever, I use the smaller one. It's basically the same thing, but it's just a smaller size. So I just use those because the top is abrasive too, and I can just push it straight down and then just carve out the little circle. You got to have kind of a soft touch with it, because it's real easy to just like make it slip, and it will just slip and put a big line in your gel coat or whatever. So you do got to have kind of a soft touch, but that's how I do it. And I get a pretty good result. As you can see, it's pretty clean, you know. It's not like computer cutout like the Rocket Bunny ones or anything, but it doesn't look bad by any stretch. So let's go ahead and mark out where the holes are, and we'll start drilling those out with our small drill bit. Once we have them drilled out, we're going to tape the thing onto the car temporarily, but we'll just go ahead and do our drilling, and then we'll screw it in, and hopefully we'll have a nice solid mount onto the car, and we'll start sanding down, finish up our refinement, and just go from there. Alright guys, so I've gone ahead and marked them out. As you just saw, you can see how I just took my Sharpie marker and I just matched them up right along that line right there. And then I used my measure tape to measure right here. You can see I made a little mistake right there, so I just put a little X through that one to let me know that that is not the one. And I just corrected it right there. Everything else is looking really good. Now almost every one of these is 6 inches apart. I used that 6 inches to give me a nice guide as I was going along and first making these. I like it to look really uniform. I didn't want to just kind of go randomly. I think that looks kind of sloppy, so I did exactly 6 inches in most cases. Back here it's a little bit longer. It's about 7 inches or 6.5 rather between these two right here, just because I wanted to place this one in a position that was a little more supportive. 6 inches would have been somewhere like right here, and I felt like that was not quite supportive enough of this section, so I just lowered that down to 6.5. But then I did 6 from the bottom one right there out to the center one, and then 6 from those two, and then again 6 from those two right there. And same thing, you can see this exactly 6 inches between these two and exactly 6 inches between these two here. And then up through the front we have this one right here, and then 6 inches between all of these front ones until you get up to this one right here, which is its own, it doesn't really measure up to any of the other ones, but it's its own mounting point right there. And then we've got these two on the bottom. We got one right here and then one right up in the front of the lower canard support right there. All right, so I believe it's, what is that, 16, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 mounting points on these. And really that's just because the front section is so detailed and I needed the canard to be really nice and flush up against the bumper, so I put 2 just to be safe up in the front. But I imagine you could also, if you don't plan on taking these off, which you'd have to do quite a bit of modification if you wanted to mold them onto the car, you'd actually have to do a cut line in the front to be able to take your bumper off, which is definitely possible, but I wanted to do it this way because if I want to take my bumper off, I can just take the whole thing off. I just thought it was cleaner without the cut line in it in the front. But if you wanted to do that, this whole front section right here would just come off with the whole bumper when you took the bumper off. But I don't know, I just decided to go this way and save myself the trouble of making a cut line and all that. I'll just take the whole thing off if I want to take the bumper off. It just takes 60 seconds pretty much to take this off. Anyways, we have our mounting points. I'm now going to go ahead and take my screw, or not my screw, my drill, and drill out these holes. Again, I'm just going to use a small diameter drill, and then I'm going to use just regular screws to put it into the car. Eventually we're going to be going for this, which is the well nuts. This is what it will end up looking like. And then we got to go through the bumper as well. You can see I've got the well nuts in the bumper there as well. That's eventually what it's going to look like, but for now we're just going to be using very, very simple hardware. Alright guys, we have all of our holes drilled out successfully. As you can see, I just used a very small drill bit, just one that's going to accommodate these little screws right here, these little temporary guys. They're just typical Phillips screws. So I used this tiny little drill bit. It's that guy right there. and that's going to be perfect. It's going to give me enough grip to screw the whole thing on there really nice and tight, so I can get a good snug fit onto the fender while I do my final sand down. And then of course we're going to go in with our M6 hardware. So at this point, let's go ahead and tape the thing to the car. It's got to be exactly where it needs to be before I drill into my fender, because once you drill into your fender, that's it. There's no going back. So I'm going to tape this thing on as absolutely closely as I can to the final position. Of course, making sure to not only have it perfectly set onto the fender, but also onto the bumper as well. I have to make sure that it is exactly where I want. So we're going to be taping this thing up quite a bit to make sure it's nice and solid on there before we go in and actually drill in. But once it's on there, I'm just going to drill right through the holes that I just drilled and just go ahead and put the same diameter holes, the smaller holes, into the fender, and then we're going to screw this thing in. Alright, so I've got the overfender ready to go. We're going to go ahead and apply it to the fender here. I'm just going to use tape. We're going to tape everything up, and then we're going to go ahead and screw right through the holes into the fender and into the bumper and all the mounting areas, and then we're going to go ahead and screw in our hardware.
Characters, but some of them are all hidden. I wonder why you all want to dress always the same. The same hats, the same coats. I'm sure all of you are interesting and have wonderful things about you. But looking at you in the street, you all look so much the same. Express yourselves better.
Alright, so we have the overfender taped on there real nice and good. I triple checked it and made sure it was in the correct spot. I even had to make a couple of adjustments to my tape, as you saw in the time lapse there. I laid it up and I looked down here, and this line around the emblem here wasn't lining up, so I had to remove that top layer of tape and try again. And that's what you need to do. You just need to make absolutely sure it's exactly where you want it. If it's not right, then just stop, don't keep going. Remove the tape, or whatever you're doing, do it over again until it's right. You know, don't settle for less just because you don't want to have to do it again. You know, that's just in my opinion. Anyways, we have it exactly where we want now. We've got it taped really nice and strong all the way around the side there, so that's hugging the fender really nice and tight, exactly where it's going to when it's fastened on. I didn't need to add any tape down here or to this section right here, because that's not going anywhere. It's exactly where it's going to be when it's drilled in, and so it wasn't necessary to add any there because we have a nice reinforcement right here. We've got a nice strip of tape up there, and all of this is taped up here too. I was looking for these lines right here to line up exactly along that body line right there, and of course the door seam here and the emblem. Those were my most important lines beside the headlight line here. It was also very important. So now that we have it on the fender, we're going to go ahead and drill in. I'm just going to drill right through the tape, right into the existing holes in the overfender right here, and through the fender on the car. And then we'll screw in our screws, not completely tight yet, just enough so that it's holding it onto the car, and then we'll go ahead and remove the tape because we don't want that tape staying on there for too long.
characters, but some of them are all hidden. I wonder why you all want to dress always the same. The same hats, the same coats. I'm sure all of you are interesting and have wonderful things about you. But looking at you in the street, you all look so much the same. Try and express yourselves better. Express yourselves better.
All right, holes are drilled, screws are in, tape is removed, and everything is looking sweet, looking so good. It is nice and solid. That puppy is not coming off of there at all. We have every one of the screws tightened in there to just hand tight. You never want to go super tight on any fiberglass piece at all. In fact, I do have a couple of areas that I do need to repair. This one right here, I believe, this one right here had a tiny little crack right there that I'm going to need to fix. And then right here on the edge, there's a tiny little crack. Other than that, perfect. I had no damage whatsoever putting these things in, and I'm satisfied with the placement of it. You can see down here at the canard area, you can see just how close and how flush we were able to get with the bumper. You cannot see any gap in there whatsoever. It is nice and flush and solid. That thing is not moving at all. It's like one piece of the bumper almost. Same thing with the front cap area right here. Look, you can see no gap whatsoever, almost no gap. So I'm very, very happy. Our headlight line is looking perfect. That's right where we want it. Right here is perfect as well. We wanted it just an 1/8 inch off of the actual headlight right there, so that it's actually contacting just the fender itself and not coming over the fender. It's really nicely spaced so that there's just a tiny little 1/8 inch gap between the actual headlight and the overfender. So looking great. I can run my finger across here and I have a nice smooth flush edge. I'm going to go ahead and do my finish beveling over the top here to just get that so that it's perfectly flush and I can't even tell where the fender ends and the overfender begins. But I am super happy, guys. I got a little bit right here to trim off on this edge right here. It's probably about 1/4 of an inch just to round that out right there. And other than that, I think we're good. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and take my heat gun and I'm just going to apply heat across the entire piece. And what that's going to do is basically just help the fiberglass conform a little bit more while it's now fully fastened onto the car. It'll just help to give it a little bit of relief because it is stretching a little bit right now. And if your fiberglass is cold, then that's just putting a lot of stress and could crack, could put stress cracks and stuff like that on the underside that you cannot see. So I'm just going to go ahead and massage the whole thing with heat and get it to really conform and put a little bit of relief on my cold fiberglass right now, because it's still quite cold out in the garage right now, and you do run the risk of fiberglass cracking on you. But I'm so happy, guys. You can see the sidewall is still nice and straight. That's a great sign. that we're in good shape here. It's in the proper position, and we are ready to go after our heat with the final refinement. I'm going to go ahead and give the whole thing a sand down, a nice good sand down. It's already super smooth. I can already tell I'm not going to have to do too much at all. Alright, so we've got the thing fully sanded down. I had to do a little bit of filling in a couple of spots, but I got it taken care of, no problem. Finished up all my beveling in the canard area right there. Tightened up the sidewall just a little bit and did a little extra beveling through the top, and we are looking really good. It's still not 100% perfect, but the primer is actually going to help to smooth it out, give it one final smooth finish over the top. So once we get our first coat of primer on there, we'll sand that back down, and then we'll do another coat of primer, and then it should be perfectly smooth. It's about as smooth as I'm going to possibly get it right now, and it's pretty dang smooth, so I'm not worried about it at all. I also went ahead and softened up this line right here. This is not real sharp in the final shape. It's nice and soft so that it kind of matches the bumper line in the front. It's more of a soft as opposed to a sharp bend right there, so I went ahead and softened that up real good. I also just softened up every other line on the piece. I used a 350 grit sanding block like this and went over every single line. Now this isn't really coarse enough to really do any damage to the lines themselves, but it is going to take the edge off of them and soften it up. You'll notice if you look at a professional piece, almost every time the lines are nice and soft and rounded. They're not like perfectly sharp and 90-degree angle on your lines. The major reason for that is because when you try to paint on real sharp edges like that, the paint wants to come off of the real sharp edges. So you need to round off all the lines on the entire piece so that the paint can round around the edges of the piece. You definitely don't want any real sharp edges. So I took my 350 grit sanding block and softened up every single edge on the thing and all the corners and all that. And I will do so again before we go into primer. I'll go over one more time and soften up everything. But especially in this first line right here, I really softened that quite a bit, and may even do a little bit more. I'm going to refer back to the other overfender to make sure that it's the way I want it and it's the same on both sides. But we are now going to go ahead and take the overfender off the car. We're going to make our wheel well extensions right here on the inside. That won't take long at all. And then I'm going to detail out my mounting point areas. As you can see, I've got my little popsicle stick here with my nice little template right there. This is the perfect size that I use to make my mounting points, the detail areas, the little indentations. And so I have this line right here which tells me that's where the top of the overfender or the top line is. So I bring it down to that point and I center it right over the mounting hole, and then I just trace right around the popsicle stick with my Sharpie marker, and that's how I know where to Dremel out my detail point. Alright, so let's take the thing off the car and we'll make our wheel well extensions and go from there. Alright, so after having fiberglassing the wheel well extensions, I went ahead and finished them up off camera. All I basically did was just took Bondo glass and I applied it to the front and the rear over the fiberglass and just smoothed it out, sanded it out after it had hardened, shaped it up to the exact shape that I wanted on both sides. You can see there's that side there and the back side as well. Looking really nice. They're super strong. Not going anywhere. I test fit the thing back onto the fender and it's fitting perfectly, so I'm very, very happy. You do have to be careful when you're doing those because it's easy to get too much thickness and it can actually shift the piece to the left or to the right. You got to make sure you have just enough thickness on your extensions in there so that it's locked into place. It's not going to shift on you. Makes it a nightmare if you're trying to screw in and it's moved over just a little bit. So it fits great, fortunately, in this case. So with that out of the way, the only things left to do now are to expand the mounting holes in the overfender and on the fender of the car itself. We're going to expand out to about a 1/4 inch hole for the overfender so that my M6 screws can fit through the overfender, and then we actually have to expand out a little bit wider holes on the fender itself and on the bumper so that we can put our well nuts in there. Once I go ahead and do that, I will install the well nuts. I will use the same tool that I used to install the well nuts on the back quarter panel, and once we have all those in, we'll do one final test fit. We'll put the thing back on the car, we'll screw it in with the M6 screws, make sure everything is lining up correctly. If everything is good, we'll take it back off the car, we'll detail out our mounting points, and take this thing to primer. We are so close, guys. I can already feel it. I'm so excited. Let's finish up strong. Alright guys, so I've done all my drilling on the front bumper right here. You can see all 4 in the bumper and all along the fender here in the actual size of the well nuts. You can see a little bit of a gray haze around each one, and what that is some silver zinc. This is galvanizing spray because we did expose bare metal when we drilled out these holes, so I went ahead and shot it with some zinc to prevent any rust. Definitely want to do that. It's very important. Of course, you don't need to do that on this particular bumper because it's made of polyurethane. There's nothing to rust, obviously, but you can see the gray haze around each one of these. Now, unfortunately, right here, my drill bit bit into the metal a little bit too hard, and I got the hole a little bit too big for my well nuts. See if I can demonstrate here for you. M6 well nut, these are the size that I'm using. You can see I've already applied this one right here. That's perfect. But this hole right here just got expanded a little bit too much up and to the right there. When I was drilling that in, the bit just grabbed on and ripped up about an eighth of an inch too high right there. So I am going to need to repair this hole a little bit, and in order to do that, I'm going to actually remove the fender off the car, and I'm going to use some of this. I had some of this laying around. It's some JB Weld steel stick, it's called. It's a metal reinforced epoxy putty that I'm just going to apply to the back side of this, and then I'm going to put some on the top side as well and sandwich that over that little area that got in too much right there. And it cures in about 60 minutes to a rock hard solid epoxy. You can just drill it after about 60 minutes. It's drillable, it's sandable, so that should repair that little hole right there. Then we'll go ahead and get our well nut in there. But I'm going to go ahead and put well nuts in the rest of these as well. I'm not going to film that because this video is already dragging on a little bit too long, and you guys already know how to do that pretty much. If you want to see me doing that, go back to the video that I was doing on the rear fender, over fender, when I was using that, and you'll see how to use it. The other thing that I need to do is I'm going to need to go ahead and remove the front bumper. I'm going to have to do that anyways to remove my fender to make that little repair. But there's one other thing that you have to do on your front bumper, and that is to shave out a little bit of the backside of the polyurethane. You have to shave out a little bit of the backside of the plastic because it's still real thick. It's about ½ inch thick right here, and you can't put a well nut in there because it's too thick. So you just have to take your Dremel tool and shave out just about ½ inch worth of thickness in the back right at the hole there. And I'm just going to use this bit right here. It's the same bit that I use to detail the mounting points on the overfender itself. I just use it on the back side to barrel out enough polyurethane to leave about 1/8 of an inch worth of contact area so that that well nut can squeeze in there real good. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on that, and I will show you guys detailing out the mounting areas on the overfender next. Alright, so the bumper and the fender have been removed. I'm in the process of repairing that mounting hole on the fender right now, but I'm going to show you guys on the back of the bumper here what I did. Now here's looking at the back. Here's the holes obviously that we drilled in for our well nuts that we're going to be putting in through the bumper section. There's one here on the side too. And you can see that I've taken my Dremel tool with this bit here, and I've just funneled out that hole right there so that it comes down to 1/8 of an inch worth of thickness on the outside wall. So you can see how there's 1/8 of an inch, hopefully you can see, 1/8 of an inch wall right there on every one of these. And it takes a little bit of time to bore that out because this polyurethane is so thick, but just keep at it, keep your Dremel straight and bore it out so that it comes down to 1/8 of an inch width. That way when you put in your well nut, it won't have to crush too wide. It'll be nice and thin so that it can crush in real good and strong. So we're good to go. We've done all 4 of them on the bumper there. They're all bored out to 1/8 of an inch. Same thing I did on the other side exactly. You can see, hopefully, they're all bored out, all 4 mounting points. So I'm going to go ahead and finish repairing the fender. We'll get it back on the car, get the bumper mounted back on, and we'll start putting in the rest of the well nuts into the fender. Alright guys, I now have all of my well nuts installed, well almost all of them. I've got all of them through the back, through the top, along the headlight right here, and 2 in through the bumper. Unfortunately, I was not able to get the 2 bottom holes in the bumper section right here taken care of because my well nut insert tool decided to take a crap on me. Yeah, it doesn't work anymore. I've tried probably about 5 times to get those well nuts in the bumper section right there, and it just keeps on destroying the well nuts, so that really sucks. So I'm not going to be able to put those 2 in right now. I've already got a new tool on order. It'll be here in a couple of days. Fortunately, it's not going to impact me actually mounting the overfender on the car. I was able to get all of the rest except for the canard area installed, so it's not like the overfender won't be securely fastened to the fender or anything. So it will get the job done for the time being, and the canard section sits on there fairly snugly as it is. So it's not going to be too detrimental to our mounting of the actual piece and finishing it. And then in a couple of days, I'll just throw the last 2 well nuts in there, and that'll be done. I'm now going to go ahead and detail out the mounting points. You can see I've already taken my little tool that I made, my template tool with the popsicle stick, and I've taken my Sharpie marker and marked out each of those areas that I need to shave out. I lined it up against the top here and then came down and just Sharpie marked it around the edge of it, and that gave me the exact diameter that I want. So I'm now going to go ahead and take my Dremel tool with this bit right here, same bit that we used to bore out the back of the bumper, and I'm going to go ahead and shave those out and we'll be good to go for primer. Alright guys, I've got the mounting areas detailed out. As you can hopefully see there, I just took my Dremel tool and followed that little line that I traced for each one, and I just carved out this little area right here. I left about 1/8 of an inch of base, drew a little horizontal line right there so I knew not to go below that line, and then just Dremeled it out in a nice little circle there on each one of these. You can see one for the front corner there. So with that being completed, we are now officially done with work prior to primer on the overfender. We're going to primer it, sand it all down, primer it again, and it will be complete, guys. That is it. We are done. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing primered. I'm not going to put that on camera. I'm going to make any adjustments I need to make to it between now and then. I don't think there's going to be very many adjustments to be made at all. The next video that you guys see is going to be the thing completely finished, just like I showed you when I finished the first one. It's going to be primered, beautiful. I've got all the well nuts installed. We are ready to mount when it's done, with the exception of the 2 canard ones that I was explaining earlier, but that's not a big deal. I am so happy, so excited. I am finally ready to get this thing done. Thank you guys so much. Those of you who have watched up to this point, you guys are champions for sure. I know this was a bit of a long one, but the payoff will be worth it, as I've said before. And I will have another video up for you guys ASAP. Stay tuned, guys. God bless.